Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode here of Raising the Bar. And as you know, I've been speaking to a lot of survivors, and Samantha Baldwin is here to tell her story about how she's had her children taken away from her. And it's really upsetting, really sad, but we need to know what exactly goes on in the court systems, how they're rigged, how they're set up, and how it's all inverted. And we need to kind of give people like Samantha more of a platform, more of a voice. So this is also going to help other family members and other people that are going through this to see what's going on and how we can take preventative measures to stop this happening again. Samantha is an author as well, and she's going to show her two books as well, aren't you, Samantha? Firstly, how are you? How are you doing? Thank you for joining me.
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I know this is very brave of you. It's very emotionally draining for you. It's a lot to deal with. Losing your children, I can't imagine anything worse than that. But you've used this as a platform to then write these books, and actually you've become a bit of a beacon of light. And this is actually going to be quite transformational for, well, humanity, society, isn't it? With your story, so hopefully hold that within you as well, knowing that this story is actually doing a lot of good as well. So could you show your books? We're going to start off with the books because I want to encourage everyone to buy one of these books. And can you tell the kind of the offers and how they can get a copy?
Yeah, sure. So this is my first book. That's Everything's Going to Be Okay. And this is a book I've just released, which is the sequel to this one. This is Pretended Justice. So this book, they're both fiction because I can't, as much as I'd like to write about myself, autobiographical as to what's happened. I'm restricted because of injunctions and so on and so forth. So I've written these in the form of fictional novels that explain an extremely similar situation as to the one I've been going through for the past 7 years, no, 10 years actually in total. So they're both available on my website, which is samanthabaldwin.co.uk/shop to get straight to the books. The on there as paperback, and then this one is available as ebook as an ebook on the website. However, if you want this one as an ebook, it's on Amazon, and if you've got Kindle, it's free as well on Kindle Unlimited. But you can buy these from Amazon or my website, so whichever country you're from. But obviously, if you're in the UK, I really would appreciate if you could buy it from my website. And that's it. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's how
brilliant.
books and
Okay,
yeah.
fantastic. I'll be putting links in the description. So look below, everyone. I'll do a link for the American audience and a link to the Samantha's website as well for all those in the United Kingdom. Before we get into the timeline, Samantha, could you just give us like a brief summary, maybe like, just a 30 seconds to a minute of just what's happened to you, just so everyone knows what this podcast episode's about. Is that all right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So I was married to a man. We met just over 20 years ago. We got married in 2006. We had two children, two boys. As soon as the second boy was born, which was 2011, we split up. And in December 2014, when my sons were aged 7 and 3, my eldest son started to disclose that he was being abused by his father. The disclosures became more and more severe over the coming weeks, and he was talking about other people abusing them. They both were disclosing, and it became pretty apparent that they were talking about satanic ritual abuse, which I hadn't heard of anything about at that time. I had a good, normal childhood. But it became apparent that that's what it was, and went to the police, Greater Manchester Police at the time. They didn't properly investigate. My eldest son disclosed being injected. So after a few of these disclosures, I thought, well, I need to get their hair tested. So a doctor took the hair samples. They were sent to Greater Manchester Police. The police didn't test them. It was only 16 months later when they finally agreed to testing them, and they came back full of date rape drugs. Family court at this point were involved because Greater Manchester Police didn't investigate. Father took me to family court. I didn't know anything about family court at that time. Unfortunately, I should have left the country at that point. What I didn't know about family court, I'm trying to share the message now along with many others, but basically the worst, many people are affected by family court adversely, whether it's men or women. But if your child discloses abuse, the worse the abuse, the more likelihood you have of losing them. And that's what happened to me. I lost custody 2.5 years after they started to disclose. I lost custody. And to this day, I haven't seen them for 6.5 years.
Not one day. You haven't seen them, not even one day.
Not even one day, no. I was seeing them supervised, and then something horrendous happened. There was an arson attack at their house while they were on holiday. And because that man was somebody known to me for a short time, family court said, right, you're not seeing them because you must have been behind it, with zero evidence. They don't have to prove anything. So, and because I won't accept that finding, I recently went in to try and get access, and they said, do you accept the arson finding? And I said, no, because I'm not going to lie.
Wow, they're trying to pin that on you as well. It's so inverted, isn't it? It's all just like
Yeah,
topsy-turvy, inside out. Like
yeah,
they protect the guilty and they punish the innocent. It's just absolutely
absolutely. Yeah.
absurd. I'd
There's
like to
zero
talk.
evidence. The man who did it is in prison.
Mm,
There's zero evidence.
yeah,
They just decided because it was guilt by association. That was it. And that's how dangerous the family court is. They don't have to provide any evidence, nothing.
that's crazy. Why would they even assume that you'd want to burn down a house with the kids in?
They came up with, well, yeah, exactly. They came up with this idea that that I would have thought that I'd get custody of them or something
Oh
ridiculous
my
like that.
God.
And that's somebody who's always obeyed the law. I've never
Mm,
so much as had a speeding ticket.
yeah. It's horrendous. It's just horrific, just how, yeah, inverted, as I said, it all is.
Yeah,
Maybe if it's okay, then shall we start right at the beginning? Because I'd like to know. Can we? I actually noticed. I tried looking for him online. There's almost nothing on him on this gentleman online. Sorry, I shouldn't call him a gentleman. He's not a gentleman, but you know what I mean. This male. You just there's loads of photos of you online, but like none
yeah,
of him. Like one, I think I found one, but it's almost like he's being protected even across the internet in a way. I
yeah.
don't know if that's deliberate or not.
It's strange because, like, say if the tables were turned and I was in that situation, but I was, say, innocent, I
Hmm.
would be wanting my face to be out there and give my story. But he kept very hidden, which is very
Yeah,
telling.
very telling. Yeah. So who is this guy? I mean, obviously he sounds deeply disturbed, this guy. How is it that you then, saw something in him to marry him? And did he change? Did he flip? Did he show signs of like abusing the children, or did he, could you see any evil in him to begin with?
Unfortunately, not, because they're the masters of disguise, these people. And I think when you're young as well, and because I hadn't had much experience with those kind of people. Unfortunately, you can take people on face value when you don't know any different. And he was actually known as being called lovely, and then his name, let's say, if
Mm.
he was called Damien, for example, everyone knew him as being, oh, that lovely Damien, because he was ultra friendly. And I think that is a characteristic of somebody to watch out for. I'm not saying that they're all Satanists,
Mm.
but certainly dodgy people. They can have a facade where they're like overly nice and overly charming. Love bombing, I think it's called.
Yeah. So
So
do you think he was a narcissist then, looking back? Do you think he
I
had
didn't know about a narcissist at that
right, yeah.
point. I hadn't heard of the
Right,
word.
okay, yeah. So
No,
now you're learning
no.
about all these
Now
kind
it's
of
all out that
yeah,
NPD narcissist. But
yeah.
the thing is, everyone gets called a narcissist, even
I know,
though
yeah.
they might not be. So, yeah, I'd only heard about
Mm,
narcissists probably well over 10 years after I met him. I didn't know such a thing existed.
yeah,
So yeah, it, what, yeah, I never once thought he was evil when I first met him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married him. But
yeah.
he was very secretive in a lot of ways, though. He never spoke about his childhood. And, undoubtedly he was abused. His parents were both SRA abusers.
Oh wow.
And, knowing what I've known about survivor testimonies is that they tend to forget large chunks of the childhoods anyway because they're being so badly abused. So that would make sense why he never spoke about his childhood. Because I used to think, why does he never tell me anything about his childhood? I'm there telling him all sorts of things, and he would never share anything.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, the secrecy and the loads of friends, loads of connections of different types of people as well. Because when you're talking about cults, that's the common link. But at the time, it was lots of different types of people. Like normally with your friends, a certain kind of person
mm,
with a similar characteristic. But they were all very different. And yeah, some of his friends were like ultra charming with me as well.
Mm.
But when I look back, they were just manipulating. They were just
So do you believe when you first met him, he was part of like a cult, this cult then that he ended up being part of, or do you think it was a gradual process, or do you think he was just doing it on the side whilst he was with you?
I have no idea about how it
Mm.
works really, because obviously when you've not grown, you're picking up fragments. Obviously, I'm picking up fragments of what my children, what I know about him, what
Mm.
survivor testimonies say. So, but yeah, I don't think it's anything that you can just go into.
Mm.
Although maybe they bring people in through blackmail, I'm not sure, but I think most of the time it's intergenerational. So I think most of the time is the both the parents are involved, and it's been going on for generations with communities of these Satanist abusers
Mm.
and doing rituals. But yeah, it'd be very easy when you've both got your own lives as well. It'd be very easy for him to be going off doing this, that, and the other on the odd weekend.
Yeah.
You can't be together
Mm.
all the time. So yeah, there would always be like
Yeah. It's
opportunities. So
more than
there'd be a lot
possible.
I wouldn't know
Mm.
about. Yeah.
Then you wouldn't know about. That's quite terrifying, isn't it, to think that these people can do these sorts of things and then come across really charming and friendly and open and lovable amongst everyone else, but they're doing this on the side. I mean, that's worse, isn't it? Because there's absolutely no sign of that within them, and then
Yeah, it's terrifying.
hidden.
It really is. Yeah, they become trained from being small children.
Mm.
If they've been gaslighted, what are you talking about? That never happened. They'll be learning how to do that if
Yeah.
they stay within that cult, if they don't break free. So
And yeah, and that's the thing. I've spoken to people who have broken free of that. They've broken the chain, but a lot go on to just continually do it to their own children. It's just like a
yeah,
pattern that they just keep doing. I don't know whether they're kind of instructed to do it. There's a sort of a cult dogma there that they should then do it to their children, or it's just a psychological thing where they're hurt, so they want to hurt their children. Or I've even heard stories that they do it because they want to toughen their kids up. And actually, by fragmenting the mind, splintering the mind, they can actually make them, sort of have greater abilities. I mean, it's just, I don't know if you've heard this as well, but that's actually something I've heard is that they kind of
yeah,
shatter the mind, they splinter the mind, and then they can program them even. So
yeah, like MK Ultra and
yeah,
all sorts of things. Yeah, I don't delve too deep with that kind of thing because it's
yeah.
it's too much for me.
Mm.
I have got faith and I pray all the time, and
Yeah, good
um,
for you.
I don't believe that. Well, it's proof when survivors come out. It's not like always a continuation. It's only certain ones who go on to, and we don't know, do we? We don't know all
No,
the. It's spiritual, it's physical, it's mental. There's so many different levels to this
yeah.
that we can't really understand it.
Many levels, many layers to it, yeah. And so what happened next then in the story? So then you were getting more. Your two boys, they were both coming to you and telling you stuff that was going on with the father, right?
So yeah, what happened? So these are my first children. Obviously, I've never had
Mm.
any children before them. So when I got pregnant with my second child, my ex-husband began to behave really badly. Like in retrospect, I think he was trying to get me to leave him. He was behaving that
Mm.
badly. Because he wanted to have access to the children on his own as much as possible. And also around that time, just around the time birth of my second son and the pregnancy of that, my eldest son, who was 3/4, he was showing signs of being abused, but I didn't know what they were. I
Mm.
just thought, what's wrong with him? Lots of different things. He started with a bad stammer. He started with anxiety. He started to want to sleep in my bed. Nightmares, night sweats, lots of different separation anxiety got worse over the years. He never wanted me out of his sight. He never, because he was being told, unbeknownst to me at the time, if you tell anyone, you'll never see mummy again.
Mm.
So he was being programmed with all of that. And then had my second son, and then we split up. I asked him to leave. And then he started taking me to family court. And I was thinking at the time, why does he want a court involved? I never knew anything about family court.
Mm.
And why is he trying to get court involved in this? They don't, I mean, little one was a baby, but my eldest one didn't want to go and stay over at his and get really upset. So this is why I had the court court order, because I knew then that I'd get it all, like a court order saying, no, you have to send them on such and such an evening once a week. So that started then. My eldest son's separation anxiety got so bad that I ended up having to homeschool him because he was screaming about going into school.
Mm.
I thought it was an educational thing, but it wasn't. It was being abused, and that's there was all sorts of things. His learning took a nosedive. He could remember things one day and not the next. But my ex-husband was always turning it on me. He'd be like, "Oh, you're rubbish. You're rubbish. You're," because that's what they do. If they're doing terrible things to the children, they'll try and call the safe parent and get them to like in a spin looking at, like, I was like looking at myself thinking, oh, I'm a bad mother. What is there anything I can do better? And I was looking at all these therapies and everything. And that's what they want, you in a spin, and then they can control and carry on doing what they're doing to the children. And then we moved house. This was October 2014. And then my eldest son, he started to disclose in the December. And his first disclosure was actually to my mum, and he was with mum, and then I was with my youngest son, and then I got this phone call, and she told me his first disclosure, which was he said about his father would touch him whilst he's playing on the Xbox, and I just remember shrieking, and then I kind of black that evening is just wiped out. I can't remember anything after that because of the shock of it. But then they both started to disclose over that particular December and then January as well. But literally, we couldn't believe what we were hearing. And they were disclosing to me, mum, my sister, the police, social workers, my sister's partner, even when his older children was around, they disclosed in front of a lot of people. And yeah, just talking about it. It was actually through my youngest son's disclosures how we found out it was satanic ritual abuse, because of what he was saying. Like the worst disclosure was daddy kills babies, and that came from my youngest son. And even though it was utterly shocking to hear, I didn't think he was making it up, because I just knew. And then it didn't take long to find out that it was satanic ritual abuse. Shortly after that, a few weeks later, I saw the Hampstead children disclosures going around on the internet, and I was like, oh, that's what my children have been, albeit they gave a lot more detail than mine did, but and talked about many, many more people. But I was like, my goodness, this is what my children have just been saying a few weeks earlier. They're saying their videos, even though they were released their videos a few months before that. I was like, wow, this is. I mean, I already knew, it was satanic ritual abuse, but yeah, I went to the police, obviously, and they were taken in by him, and at least one officer, no, two officers were taken in by him, and they didn't properly investigate. They didn't even search his house properly, because if they had have done so, they would have found all the injection stuff that he kept in the loft, which is where my eldest son said it was kept. So he gave all of this, like further down the line, in his second debut interview, all this detail about being drugged, about that it felt like a mosquito bite, and he even slumped back on the sofa to demonstrate the effects. So this is like loads of detail. And he said his father and his father's housemate, one of the abusers, would go up into the loft and he said he saw the shadow of a needle. It gave so much like detail. They didn't even. I mean,
Why do you
by the
think that
time
is? Why do you think the police didn't want to, investigate that after being told that?
I think they thought it was. I mean, after they'd been told that, it would have moved that anyway, because that came a few weeks after the initial disclosure. So when the police first arrested my ex-husband, my eldest son had only said a bit, but like it talked about sexual abuse, and my youngest son was saying all kinds of disturbing things that we couldn't quite like understand properly, because he was just starting to talk about bits of things. I mean, it was alluding to something extremely sinister, and he even talked about people with witches' hats on, and they just like really, and we're trying to piece together what is going on here. But no, I think they just thought, well, I mean, the interviewing officer just said something like, well, he doesn't look like a paedophile. And, he said no, he said he didn't do that. And his house was immaculate. I didn't see anything lying around or, you know, really, then we should have known this isn't going to go anywhere good,
Yeah, I was
basically.
going to say after that happens, it's sort of downhill from there, isn't it? Like it's not going to, they're not going to really come to your support when you know they're not, can't even look at, just basic evidence that a child's giving. That's
Exactly.
terrible, absolutely shocking. But I kind of know that goes on. It's corrupt from the absolute to the absolute core, isn't it?
It
These
really is, yeah.
institutions.
And
So
it's Rochdale Police as well, and they're
yeah,
known for just, ignoring grooming gangs and rape gangs. And
yeah, of course. Yeah, we know that. That's all come out as well. So at this time, the kids, so you'd split up and you just moved house. And so what you were sharing you were sharing the custody of the children at the time. Is that right? So you would see them like a few days a week and then he would see them.
not sharing, they were living with me. So
Right,
he
okay.
would like say have them um he would see them every weekend.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, so every weekend they stay at his at least one night and they see him midweek as well. So
Right.
see him
They must have
more.
been really dreading seeing him then, no? Like at that point.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I feel, it's just horrendous looking back and think, but if I hadn't have made them go, the family
Yeah.
court would have probably took them off maybe earlier.
Yeah. Right. I see what you mean. Because you've got to play ball, haven't you? You've got to be seen to be fair in their.
Yeah, and I didn't think in
Yeah.
a million years that
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, maybe they're bored there, or
Mm,
I, now if anyone has a child who doesn't want to go with a parent, that's a big red flag, really,
yeah.
because they should always want to go with the mum and dad, even if they're not fantastically engaging. It's their mum, it's their dad. They should always want to go with them. There should never be any fear because that's a
Yeah.
massive red flag. But unfortunately, I didn't realise this at the time.
Mm. Could you see any signs of them, maybe for other parents to look out for? Were they kind of going a bit like numb? Were they going a bit like were they more withdrawn when they knew they had to see the dad? What was the emotions they were showing? Can you remember?
Well, it was different at different ages because I remember the
Yeah.
last time they saw him, my youngest son was going berserk, and he was 3, and he was like throwing himself around and everything.
Mm.
And my eldest son was 7, and he was like, "Come on, come on," and then said Littleton's name. "Come on, we have to go." And he was being more kind of,
Mm.
but yeah, that's the last. That was the last time yeah, made them go to his. Yeah.
Blimey. Ah, awful. And then so then that was going on, and then at what point did the so there was a family court. How does it work? There's a family court hearing where did he push for that, where he wanted complete full 100% custody then? What was the process that led to that?
So after the police investigation, he was bailed, my ex-husband, so he couldn't have any contact with the boys until the investigation had concluded.
Yeah.
Well, it was the following year in September. So um, they said they only sent it to CPS because the family had a history of complaining and to protect the father. That's what they said. No, the words were, because I've seen the report, to give the father a level of protection, and because this family had a history of complaining, because we were like obviously complaining to GMP about the first officer, about inadequate, investigation.
Mm.
Why don't you test the hair? And they were fobbing us off saying it doesn't meet with the requirements, when it did meet with the requirements perfectly. It met with the
Mm.
requirements of hair testing absolutely perfect. There was lots of hair. It was time scales. They hadn't seen the father for 3 weeks, so it met with all these requirements of a hair test. But they fobbed us off. So they didn't like it that we complained, and they mentioned that they only sent the case off to CPS because we complained and to protect the father. So this gives you an idea. So that was September 2015 when he was
Mm.
officially off the hook. So then
Right.
he would have then immediately applied to family court. He applied initially for joint custody because I'm sure his solicitor would have probably advised it would look better for him if
Mm.
he didn't apply for full custody at that point. And I received the court papers on Halloween of all days. That was of
Mm.
2015. And then I got this, that was for Nottingham Family Court because we'd actually moved away to Newark in Nottinghamshire.
Mm.
All of us moved. We abandoned our houses, just left our houses empty and just started renting houses around there. And we didn't move anywhere near far enough. You know, you need to get out of the country when this kind of thing happens, if anyone's listening, to a non-extradition country where the
Mm.
authorities can't extradite you back. And it cited emotional harm. So the papers I received, he was taking me to a court and applying for full custody due to emotional harm that I've caused the boys, leading them to believe that they've been sexually abused by their father, etc. So then the first appearance in court happened in December 2015, so exactly a year after the disclosures. And I just assumed it would be like, you know, the judge would hear what the children have said and be done and dusted. How can you possibly allow access, you know? But it just it's like a long drawn out process of hearings every few weeks or every couple of months. And then they'd ask for certain evidence to be obtained, like police disclosure, social services disclosure, statements, etc. So you're paying a fortune to these solicitors and barristers, and the barristers are just basically like court actors.
Mm.
Yes, Your Honour, you know, they put on all these
Mm.
posh accents and they like just act, you know, in this, it's like a twisted circus. And then the solicitors are just basically, and you know, I'm not dissing solicitors, but a lot of their work is like glorified admin.
Mm.
You know, they're just sending off the paperwork. You think, gosh, I could do that and not have to pay like a couple of grand here and there
Mm.
every few weeks. Um, so then this is going on for ages. And then in the meantime, we hear about ICSA, you know, the independent, have you heard about the independent inquiry into child sex abuse?
No, I haven't. Can you tell me
It
about
was
that?
it's closed now. It's like an inquiry.
Mm.
And this we heard about this in the news, and they were looking at investigating historical failures of different institutions concerning child sex abuse. Thought, well, this is a recent, albeit very recent, historical case. So it was through that they put us in touch with another higher ranking police officer at GMP. And then he, through speaking to me, agreed for the hair that had been sat there in the forensic department for 16 months in sealed bags, hair samples from both my sons.
Mm.
He agreed for that to be tested when he found out of me that it did meet with their requirements of testing. And surely enough, mid 2016, it came back positive for a number of date rape drugs in both my sons from root to tip. So any right-minded person would then know 1 centimetre, and reading the documents that came with it, the guidelines, 1 centimetre of hair roughly equals to 1 month of growth.
Mm.
So my youngest son had 7 centimetres of hair sampled. My eldest son had 5. So that would equate to 5 months approximately in 7 months of drugging over a period
Mm.
of time. And goodness only knows how long it was going on for that, because that was as far back as the hair sample would allow.
Mm.
Obviously, if there'd have been girls with long hair, then, you know, that would indicate several years of drugging.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
I then asked the officer, well, he sent it to CPS along with I said, well, my eldest son's described being drugged. That should be enough with these results. So I was shocked when they came back and said not enough evidence again for a criminal. I'm like, well, what on earth do you need?
Mm.
I thought, well, at least the family court will keep him away from my children with this evidence that will submit it into family court, and that will keep him away. And then there was the fact finding of the family court case, which took place in February 2017, 7 years ago. And to my horror, the judge, well, he started reading out the judgment. I hadn't heard it all because I knew it was going so terribly that I upped and left and hid with my sons.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know how terrible it had gone because I didn't stay for the duration of the judgment being read out. But I'd actually lost custody, and I'd be accused of having a false belief system. So that I believe the children have been abused, but it was a false belief system. So many of us have this false belief system, apparently. And then the worst of all was that the judge found that I had drugged my own sons. It gave like a time period for this as well. So not only is that never do that in a million years, and it would have had to have happened mid-December 2014 as like a one-off. His theory was that I knew when the police investigation started, I knew it would go no further without a form of corroborative evidence to support. So then went on the internet, bought drugs. By the way, he never asked for my internet search history or,
Bank
bank
account.
statements.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of that.
Yeah.
That would have proved. But this is how family court work. And that I'd done that, and that explains the hair test results. Well, that's impossible time-wise, because how were drugs all the way through from root to tip if that was just a one-off in mid-December? And by the way, that wouldn't have even been in the hair. It would have still been in the root of the hair. So when you research it, it takes 3 weeks or something, or up to a month, for it to come out of the bulb of the hair and submerge into the hair shaft. Actually, there wouldn't have been any drugs for a sample to be taken. So it's absolute. So this is how the family court worked. Just nonsense, absolute utter nonsense.
Why
So
did they think? Why did they think that was you doing that and not the father, though?
I don't know whether he did. I don't know whether he was just covering up John,
Mm.
because bearing in mind he's listening to me and my family giving all this evidence.
Mm.
I'm not sure now given what I know about Jeremy Lee. I can say his name. His name is all out there
Yeah.
associated with my name. He's since retired. He's an extremely dubious man.
This
I've
is the
even had a
judge, by the
whistleblower.
way. We need to just say this is the judge that, yeah, because
This is
people
the
think we're talking
not
about
my
your ex-husband. Yeah.
no. I
Yeah.
think one day I'll be able to name him, but not just
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is Judge Jeremy Lee of Nottingham, and he was he was also a criminal judge as well as a family judge, and he was actually director of a adoption agency for 3 years. 2009 to 2012. So he was taking children and giving them to this adoption agency, of which he was director of, and they get large sums of money for doing so.
Mm.
He was also so he had an interest to take children of good families. He They also put the children into foster care. This is what they do when you have a situation like mine. They always put the children in foster care for a short time, and then like, let's get them used to the father, and then they can then go into the father's care. The foster carers get a fortune, and also everyone involved seems to profit from this happening.
Mm.
And also Jeremy Lee was also he was a child safeguarding officer at the Catholic Diocese of Nottingham. So he was obviously like filtering what disclosures were coming through.
Mm.
And he was also he was on the board of the Youth Advocacy Service as well, which is in the Wirral, I think. So he'd had all these things in different pots.
Yes.
And then I had a whistleblower come forward speaking out about this lady who came. She didn't identify herself, but she came to meet Jeremy Lee socially because she was dating his best friend.
Right.
So the man had a very kind of hedonistic lifestyle. Well, the most concerning thing was that she saw an email that was encouraging his friend to commit perjury in a civil court, where his friend owed this lady money, wouldn't pay her back. Jeremy Lee's advice was, say what you like, make it up, lie. And that's the judge I had. So I think he knew what he was doing. I don't think for a minute that he thought that I'd done that.
Yeah, of course. In fact, I just did a bit of research on him before our call, and said that he was subject of a disciplinary investigation after he accessed digital records relating to a criminal case without legitimate reason. So people can look up his name, Judge Jeremy Lee, and there's actually quite a lot on him being a little bit unprofessional, shall we say? And that's all over the internet now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like he was conspiring here to create the wrong decision, basically the wrong verdict, the wrong judgment on this. And can we also say, so his reasons were, can we mention about Richard Gardner and how this is based on it's PAS, isn't it? PAS theory. Can you explain for the audience what
Yes,
that is? 'Cause I think that's so important, isn't it?
I can. Yeah. So in this judgment, so the worst thing for them, for me, was they almost like wanted to sweep the drugs bit under the carpet, because after that, I wanted to prove my innocence. I took a polygraph test that proved my innocence.
Mm.
And they were almost like, just, well, it's the emotional harm that we're concerned. That was their thing. And they accused me of something when all of this was going on before the judgment. It was this parental alienation. And I didn't know what this meant and how it was being used. And actually this was the warning, like, oh my goodness, if they use this, then you're going to lose your children. So this is called, it's a made up, utter nonsense piece of garbage created by a man called Richard Gardner in the 1980s in America, who has since committed suicide 20 years ago. And he has some extremely disturbing sexual views related to paedophilia, related to animals, and sounds a bit satanic. And if you read them, they're in the back of my first book, actually, some research by and that involves Richard Gardner. And his idea of a good mum, like, say if the child had disclosed to the mother, like, that the father was doing sexual things to them, who was abusing them, then a good mother should say, stop lying, don't talk about your father like that, or I'll beat you. So this is who the family court base all of their whenever a parent has allegations against them, they use this, even though it's totally unscientific nonsense. They use this time and time and time and time again. And if you bring this into court to support your counterclaim, so they use it as a counterclaim if say the mother or whoever brings sexual abuse allegations. Well, it's the children's allegations, but you're there to be the mouthpiece of the children. And the moment they mention this, there's been some research that proves that the lady called Professor Joan Meyer in America carried out a long 10-year study of 1,000 cases, and she found that the more severe the abuse, the more likelihood you have of losing your children. So right from, they categorize this abuse, so whether it's partner abuse or child abuse, and then they categorize the child abuse into sexual abuse, physical abuse, and then a mixture of both. So when it came to a mixture of both, which obviously this would, because it's ritual abuse, it includes all forms of abuse, but everyone lost custody of the children. And if you bring this counterclaim of parental alienation syndrome, then that doubles the risk again.
Oh.
So,
God, I mean, talk about ways of protecting the absolute most heinous people and actions that you could do on with children. And it's just, so I actually watched, is it okay, it's 1 minute long, I've queued up something for us to watch. It's Richard Gardner explaining his theory in front of an audience, and I thought this would be good for us to show, because what he does is he talks about the parent that exposes what the children are saying to the authorities. They're known as the indoctrinator. And the one that actually is abusing the children, or allegedly, let's say, abusing the children, they're known as the victim. He just immediately calls them that. It's just absolutely absurd, isn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are cases where people can lie. I'm sure that does go on. People are manipulative in that sense. But to just immediately lay it all out, like the indoctrinator and the victim, like that, to completely cement these two different parties, these two roles like that, it's disgusting, really.
Step number one is to take the child away and protect the child from the indoctrinations. And then it requires a transitional site, and then slowly bring the child the victimized parent visits the child, expand the time with the child. The child has a living experience that the victim is not the ogre, the maniac, the whatever the child has been indoctrinated to believe. It's a debriefing process, is a living experiences, joint interviews. This is theoretical. I have zero success in convincing courts to do this. I've had transfer of custody, but in terms of that was in the moderate. I've yet to have a case in all the severes I've had. The court lets the kid stay with the indoctrinator, so it's all theoretical. There are a couple of colleagues in California who have had limited success with the program, so it's hypothetical, but that's how I would approach it. My hope is we're on the brink of a change, and that courts are going to start to do this more frequently.
Yeah, so that was that there. I think that kind of sums up what was going on back then. I don't know when this looks like, it's sort of late 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
But so it clearly was trying to get that theory into the court systems, and he was successful in the end. He was saying he wasn't successful there, but it actually has got in there, hasn't it? It's kind of infected the court systems. And it's probably also, I mean, people can watch my episodes about Alfred Kinsey as well, who's just like he's a paedophile. And he was involved in this sexology research that ended up in our curriculum. So it went into our education system about teaching how children are actually more sexual than we're led to believe, and how children are, that adults and children are, there's a blurring of the lines between them. And, you could talk a little bit about this as well, about how this guy, Richard Gardner, was trying to promote paedophilia, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was trying to say that every single person has got some paedophilia in them. And he was saying that if a husband has to do that, then the wife isn't satisfying him. So he had all kinds of crazy beliefs about, and there's even stuff about bestiality in there as well. Probably there's all kinds of horrific things. I'll probably
dig it up.
Paedophilia has been considered the norm by the vast majority of individuals in the history of the world, and that it's intrafamilial paedophilia is widespread and is probably an ancient tradition. And it is because our society overreacts to it, paedophilia, that children suffer. And then he said that there's a bit here that says, in addition, Gardner proposes that many different types of human sexual behavior, including paedophilia, sexual sadism, necrophilia, zoophilia, which is included involving animals, coprophilia, which is sex involving defecation, can be seen as having species survival value, and thus does not warrant being excluded from the list of the so-called natural forms of human sexual behavior. So he's just promoting all kinds of twisted things there. So this is a man who family court hold in such high esteem that they've based all that it's like you were saying, there will be some people who do this, but it's going to be a small percentage, isn't it? Because you have to be very mentally ill, or just very extremely vindictive. But most people wouldn't fall into that category. Whereas we know that abuse levels are sky high, and and that's just the figures that we know. How many people don't disclose, especially men? So what are the true figures? And they're literally turning it on its head, inverting it completely. So that it's making it impossible to keep hold of your child, because we never have enough evidence, even though we have got evidence.
That's the thing. All we want is due process. We just want there to be due process where the evidence is looked at and everything is fair and balanced. That's kind of what we want from these court systems, don't we? But they're just not doing it. They're just it's become ideological, and that's kind of how they're driving the courts. And with this topsy-turvy, theory in place, it's disgusting. So then you then took your kids and you tried to, I think I was reading that you took them away because you knew the courts were like going to come down on you, right? And so you took them away as a kind of, I'm guessing you were just rescuing your kids because you knew they were going to be taken, right? And then there was all the kind of newspaper articles about an abduction, and they made you look as though they even chose photos to kind of make you look a bit. I don't know if you know, you obviously noticed this, right? Like you're just a mother, like trying to protect your children, but they kind of did it in a way to make you look as though you abducted your children and you're a bad person. But then you obviously had all that to deal with as well, didn't you?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because I thought the same as you with the photographs, but then actually, what did happen really
Mm.
was that my sister provided that photo because she didn't want them to find us because
Oh, right.
it was literally taken. I was laughing my head off at at the Natural History Museum. I think there was a
Mm.
Tyrannosaurus Rex or something, and
Right. Yeah.
awful photograph. So she was like,
Right.
"Yeah, this is
Oh,
her
I
there."
see. Right. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. But yeah, that's the reasoning behind that. But yeah, of
Mm.
course, that really didn't help matters. My
Mm.
goodness. But it was their narrative that the court were feeding them. So they used the police as their state thugs to carry out these. They took Nottingham police off all murder inquiries, and they got 100 police officers onto it, and then they released this information. Firstly, it's about missing people. That's what they do, and then
Mm.
it goes up to actually is an abduction. So obviously we're hiding. I then had to tell bits to the boys because the boys didn't know the father was after them at that point. I never shared that we were at family court. I
Mm.
didn't want to cause them stress, but
I mean, do you
obviously
think, in hindsight, do you think you were right to sort of go try and rescue them in that way, or do you think you should have stuck with the court case?
no, because then they would have. I don't regret it actually
Yeah.
because it brought the situation out into the open, and the
Yeah.
boys knew how much I was trying to
Yes. Yeah.
keep them and keep
Yeah.
them safe.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I don't actually regret it
Yeah.
because I would have lost custody anyway because I
Mm.
was never going to accept those findings.
It actually says here the grandparents were saying, trying to plead with you to go back. Was that the parents of the father, or you? Yeah.
Absolutely, it was his. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
my family were very supportive, apart from my father.
Right.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
my mum and dad split up years ago, but my mum, my sister, my
Mm.
brother-in-law, and other extended family members have been like with us completely.
Right.
But yeah, no, that was the Satanists, we call them.
Yeah.
That was the paternal grandparents. One has since
Mm.
died. The grandmother's dead.
Right.
But yeah, they were putting on the act, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, they're the monsters who raised my ex-husband. So yeah,
Mm.
they're gonna say that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I'd like to just talk about that as well as, as we kind of finish the story off as well. Like, so when the children went back into the father's hands, they must have obviously been very traumatized by that, and not being able to see you as well. And then how did that happen and how long did that go on for then? Like you said, you haven't
Well,
spoken for the last few years.
it was a process, so I don't know how they were because I've not been
Mm.
allowed to.
Yeah.
I just read reports and things, and
Right.
we've been severed from each other, but they were
Yeah.
stolen off me. But they went into like foster care,
Yeah.
and then the father was introduced in little bits, dribs and drabs here and there, and
Mm.
pretending to be this nice father who's just been completely,
Yeah.
misunderstood and all the rest of it. This poor guy, victim of parental alienation and all that nonsense. But he had a partner, which I was glad about because you'd hope that the partners weren't involved, and
Mm.
and I had no reason to think she was. And so I was just relieved that he had a girlfriend. So this
Mm.
arson attack was the last thing I wanted. It just blew every, literally, because um
So then that was the next thing that was that the next thing that happened then was the arson attacks. I'm
yeah,
guessing you were the children allowed to speak to your mum?
no,
No.
so what they do in these cases, they
Yeah.
don't just stop contact with the parent, they stop it with any family member who agrees with the truth. So
Oh,
they're not allowed any. So they've not seen them for even longer than I, because they believe them too, of course. But yeah, I'd started to have fortnightly contact with him in October,
mm.
supervised by idiot social workers. And then it's like I was in such a vulnerable position and just traumatized, and you have to be really careful about who to trust, i.e. this man who then took it upon himself to do that, and now he's behind bars, and obviously rightly so. But yeah, no, it's
So who was this man that did the arson then?
just somebody I met online. It
And
was
what?
trusted. He had
Mm,
his own stuff going on about um different, like he was like
mm,
meant to be like looking at different paedophile rings and stuff, but you've got to be really careful because some people have got their own agendas, and
right.
there's another arson attack somewhere else about.
Mm,
I don't want to give too many details
yeah.
because um he's got a family as well, and I don't want to
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
of course. But do you think
like
his
that.
motivation was to kill, your ex-husband then?
No, because they were away
Father.
on holiday.
Right.
This other one he did as well was an empty building, as in there
Mm,
was no people in. So he's not doing it to kill people. Um, that's horrendous as it is, but
mm.
it was. I don't know why he was
But we
doing it.
don't know why. We don't know the motivation why.
No,
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 no, no.
absolutely not.
Okay, that's a shame because then, yeah, they use that as more evidence, like you said, against you, um, didn't they?
It was
That's
clearly on a rampage of his own because he was doing
yeah.
two of them. But
Mm,
I don't know because I didn't know about them. So
yeah. Yeah, okay. And so then you were still, how were you in any contact with your kids then at this point?
they then
Yeah.
severed off contact because they just did, and then they had a fact
Yeah.
finding into that, and of which I was like involved in this arson, according to the judge.
Right.
She didn't even provide a theory, like with the
No,
drugs. They
no.
provided this bizarre theory. There was no theory apart from I must have known because I knew this man. That was it. That's how dangerous the family court are when it comes to they can just make it up because there's balance of probabilities.
Mm,
It's not like a beyond all reasonable doubt. It's a very you think that what should be there to protect children who have been
mm.
abused, or people or partners who've been abused or whatever is being actually abused. The system is being abused and then into making false findings against innocent parents.
Yeah, it's been completely hijacked, the system, and been
Yeah,
turned upside down to favor the abusers. Um, yeah, absolutely infected, isn't it? Absolutely
absolutely.
infected.
I just think it was a done deal,
Yeah.
whichever judge it had been, because once they made this finding against me, and the more
Mm,
you try and protect your child with it, like the drugging and everything like that, and because I was doing so much to try and prove my innocence, and
mm,
also I was trying to get evidence against him as well. I was going to the police again, and I was asking them to test the hair again when I hadn't seen the children for so long to prove it was him. And I went to the National Crime Agency. I was going to safeguarding this, that,
yeah.
and the other, and they hated it that I was actually still fighting to get
Mm,
justice. And I think that's why they slammed the arson finding on me, because they just wanted me to keep away, and that was a good excuse for them to give me a bar in order to prevent any access for years. So yeah, I think it was all part of a
yeah, concerted effort. Because the kids were testifying, the kids were in support of you, and they, weren't they? They kept talking about
yeah.
this, and they just wouldn't listen to them, right?
No, no. Well, they gave their evidence. They didn't want to see the father. They told Kafkas they didn't want to see him, and then they just literally told. So Kafkas are not the voice of the child. They're like the voice of the paedophile. That's what I call them.
Mm,
It's an absolute joke. It really is. It's a
mm,
horrific system. I did everything by the book, and look at how they treated me. Yeah, I did get mixed up with someone who did what I did, but I didn't know about it. And you cannot be blamed for other people's actions. You can't be
yeah.
punished and your children punished for all these years because of some random man's actions.
Yeah, of course. Did you try and reach out to the his mum and dad?
Oh gosh, no. What
No.
his
Yeah.
the
The satanic,
grandparents?
yeah,
No,
no,
I'm
no,
not
it's not.
allowed. No,
No,
gosh,
and you
no.
couldn't anyway. Yeah, no, you couldn't even.
No, no, they
No.
put injunctions on you, so you're not allowed to. Not that I would with them, but
Mm,
no, I mean they're the people who created such a monster. So
Yeah.
get any sense out of them.
Can we talk about that then? So do you believe that they are part of like a bloodline, maybe? Are they? Or
I
how
don't
does
know
it
about
work?
all this bloodline stuff
No,
really.
okay.
That's not what
No,
I kind of
okay.
look into. But
Part of a cult.
yeah. They
Right.
were definitely involved, yeah, definitely. And again, it's like the mother hid behind, she pretended to be a Christian and she got to church.
Mm.
And then the father, you could quite, after these allegations, you could quite easily, a lot of people could meet him and think he was a dirty old man.
Mm.
But no way, I didn't know anything about Satanism or anything like that. But it's the more you look at it, it's generational. So these people are brought up with networks and groups getting together to do rituals, but they also do, like, a lot of them are paedophiles as well. So they'll sexually abuse, not just in rituals, but just because I know this because of my boy's disclosures. He'd just do things whenever he could, really. But so it wasn't always rituals. But again, I only know, like, I can't speak out on what I think about other cases and what I think about what I've heard, but I'm just like putting together the fragments of what I've heard my own son saying to me firsthand, and knowing they're telling the truth, and then matching it up with other disclosures and just thinking, and then finding out about cults and that it operates on a large scale. As obviously, I don't think any of us could ever know unless we'd either been subject to it ourselves, or
Mm.
or someone very close and trusted has told us. But even then, it's like their memories are so fragmented because of the parts and the alters and the dissociation that goes on. But yeah, these are organized networks, aren't they? So that, and then they're protected, and it wouldn't be too far flung to think that they've got people in all walks of life protecting them in different areas, whether it be the police force, the judiciary, social services, easily, yeah, different
Yeah.
gatekeepers.
Yeah, absolutely. And because your youngest said that he saw his dad killing babies. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wonder why do you think your kids are protected? Do you think maybe these kids are maybe kidnapped and they kill the kidnapped kids?
Again, this is just from what I've heard, but you can have, yeah, people who are kidnapped, or you can have mules, I think they call them, women who they get pregnant and then hide the pregnancies they never registered. So that'd be a very, very easy and believable way of how these atrocities can happen, because these babies would just go unaccounted for. No one would ever know they exist.
They have actual designated breeders, don't they? That's what I've heard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've heard. That's not, obviously, my little boys can't tell me all that information, but um, yeah, it that would be, it is possible, isn't it? And they can kill adults, by
Mm.
a homeless person, or a kidnapped child from care who doesn't go, all the thousands of children who go missing in care,
Yeah.
or then occasionally the ones who are kidnapped from people. But yeah,
Mm.
once you start looking at it like that, it's very possible, isn't it, to
Yeah.
to murder these babies. And
Yeah. I've heard that mothers are they take women on the streets as well, and they pay them, money like 300 quid or something, 500 quid to give birth to a baby, and then that's baby's then killed in a ritual.
yeah.
Um,
And then there's also you know for example, brothers and sisters who are forced to do things, and then the female gets pregnant, and then they perform abortions and things, and
mm,
obviously kill the babies that way as well. So there's all kinds of
yeah.
all kinds of
It's to people listening, they must think, oh, this is just so far out, but that's what actually protects it, I think, because it sounds so just absurd and just evil and just something that can't possibly exist. Why would anyone ever do that? That's actually part of the protection mechanism, because then people just write it off immediately. And but this stuff does go on. I've spoken to enough survivors now that have either witnessed it or they've even taken part in it as children. They've actually killed other children. So, I mean, and all their stories connect from all over the world, Samantha. How can it be that they're all saying the same thing and they don't know each other?
exactly,
It's
yeah,
not.
it's like
Yeah.
someone I can't, was it Tim Tate who said, is it a conspiracy amongst toddlers throughout the world?
Yeah.
How can they get that information to each other? They
Yeah.
can't.
Exactly. So it's just so consistent amongst all these people from all over the world and children as well talking about this that that's enough for me. It's clearly
Yes.
it's going on. And it's just what we do about it. That's the point, isn't it? So just to kind of finish off, because I thank you for your time, by the way, Samantha. Thank you
Very
so
well.
much. And so you've had no contact with the children since in the last 5, 6 years. Do you know that they're alive? Have you heard anything?
Yeah. My father sees them,
Mm.
and I also get indirect videos that I see that we exchange three
Mm.
times a year as well. So
Okay.
thankfully, it's kept the
Mm.
link between us, and we're able to say that we love each other, and I can see them growing up, um, and they tell me their interests and what they've been up to.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
Because
thankfully.
doesn't it reach a point when they become adults, then it breaks the custody then, and then you can see them, right? So isn't one of them nearly 18?
Yeah, one of them's nearly 17.
Oh, nearly
It's not
17.
officially, they aren't officially free until they're 18 with these
Ah.
court orders. Like some
Mm.
people say, oh, when they're
Mm.
16, but it doesn't work like that,
Mm.
unfortunately, with these kind of court orders. But I
Mm.
am, and will always say this, I do believe that a miracle will happen. And, I don't believe that we'll have to wait like until my youngest one turns
Mm.
18. I mean, he's only 13. So
Yeah.
that's a few years away. But I do believe that a miracle is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think the only way for that to happen is the father being fully exposed for what he is and dealt with accordingly and imprisoned for what he's done, befitting to his crimes, and that is what I pray for every day. Like,
Mm.
I've done for years now.
Yeah.
And I do believe it will happen. Yeah.
What can we do, Samantha? What can we do to help? Like what can the people watching do?
Well, just share the story, and I encourage anyone to buy the book if you can.
Flash them up again. Hold them up again. We'll do another one.
Yeah. So this is the first book. That's Everything's going to be okay. That's the first book.
Yeah.
Second one, Pretended Justice. And that's taken from a quote by Plato: "The worst form of injustice is pretended justice." And then this one was what I always used to say to the boys: "Everything's going to be okay." And it yeah, I just think I was meant to write those books, and the way I got each book, like it's quite extraordinary, really. It was never in my plan to write a book, but it's a way of being able to disseminate information like creatively in the form of a fictional novel when you're restricted by all of these injunctions and so on and so forth.
I was going to say, how is it that you're allowed to? You say you can't write it in a book what's happened, but why is it you're allowed to go on podcasts and talk about it then?
Well, I'm not like allowed. I've
Yeah.
just it's basically, I mean, I don't mention names, of
Mm.
course, and even if I publish photographs, the boys look so different now. I
Mm.
mean, they're
Mm.
like teenagers and young men now, so they completely wouldn't be recognised on that. But because the story went public, it's all out there anyway. I they said I'd made allegations of sexual abuse, so I'm not saying anything differently. I'm
Right.
just proving my innocence with the drugs,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Well, why didn't you put that into a book though? Why couldn't you put all that into the book then?
Into
Mm.
yeah, because I couldn't risk writing that as an autobiography because then it's there written down in black and white,
Yes.
and you hear of
Mm.
things, and you can change people's. I think as long as you're not too, you have to be careful about descriptions and things like that. That would, if it can identify someone, then that's when you have to be careful. But
Right.
there's
Yeah.
nothing like identifiable of the real people in the book. This is just a
Mm.
fictional book, and it was just a way of sharing information in a legal way,
Yeah.
really.
Clever.
I hope to be able to write a completely clear
Well, you will
book.
at some point. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure you will at some point. That's the thing, and so it's getting to that point now anyway, isn't it? I think where it's all going to come out for
absolutely.
everyone, especially as the kids become adults as well, and hopefully more stuff will come out there. So
Yeah.
that's more that's another book as well, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, well,
so,
someone was saying, "Oh, the next one will be called Reunited." I do believe the
exactly.
next book
Yeah,
will be
yeah,
a
it
lot more
will.
positive.
Yeah. No, God bless you, and good luck with everything.